Chapter 11. Crossing the Kalamath River, How to Swim Mules, Siskiyou Indians, Emigrant Ford, Trout Bailing, a Beaver Town, breeding grounds of the pelicans and various water birds, pursued by Kalamath Indians, interview with Jeep, the desert prong horned antelope, acorns and woodpeckers, yellow-headed blackbird, snake scout, arrival at Camp Commission, end of journal. May 17th, leave this sandy waste, cross over a low divide and descend into a narrow gully named Bogus Hollow. Creep along between high craggy peaks for 10 miles to reach the Kalamath River, a wide rapid stream that I have yet to cross, but how just is a puzzler. The banks are high, not as tree grows along its side or nearby, where with to make either canoe or raft. I follow on its course for 8 miles. The river makes a sudden bend, and in the angle on the opposite side I can see the charred remains of a log shanty amidst a clump of trees, one of which has been felled so as to fall across the river and forms a rude footbridge. We unpack the mules, carry all the packing gear and provisions on our own backs to the other side, an operation requiring steady hands and sure feet. The footway, a single tree, and not even a handrail to steady the crosser. All safely across and no mishap. The next operation is to swim the mules, a very simple process if properly managed. A risky and dangerous one if due precautions are not neglected. The strength of the current must be estimated so that the mules may be driven upstream far enough to ensure that not being washed further down the opposite side. Then, where you are desirous they should land, and the place selected for them to land should always have a shelving shore. Supposing you have a canoe, the bell horse, deprived of his bell, is towed by the canoe across the stream. A packer, standing in the canoe, keeps ringing the bell violently. The mules, that have followed their leader to the edge of the stream, are prevented galloping across the river bank by the packers. At last, in sheer despair, they dash into the water and swim towards the clanging bell. Nothing can be seen but long ears and noses, or heard save the tinkling bell, the splashing water, and a medley of snorts ranging from a shrill whistle to a sound compounded of creak and groan gasp from the older, asthmatical, short-winded mules. If we have no canoe, the bell horse is ridden into the water. When the rider feels the horse begins to swim, he grasps the mane with his left hand, floats from off the horse's back, swims with his legs as in ordinary swimming, whilst with the right he splashes the water against the horse's face, thus keeping the animal's head always upstream. On reaching the opposite side, when the horse's feet touch the ground again, the man again drops astride, riding it out, ringing the all-potent bell with all his might. I learned from my guide that a settler squatted where we crossed about a year before, built this shanty, made the footbridge, and put in some grain crops. But the Indians discovered, killed, and scalped him, burnt his shanty, and carried his wife away prisoner. Not a cheering story, considering I am going through their very stronghold. May 18th, a sharp, frosty morning, very cold, sleeping in the open air. Get away soon after sunup, leave the flat, grassy valley, and ascend the timbered shores of the Siskiyou Mountains. Follow an Indian trail through barren gorges and along rocky ledges for 20 miles and observe lots of deer tracks, but no deer. Descend the northern slope, arrive at Immigrant's Ford, and come plump upon a large encampment of Siskiyou Indians. 15 miles to the next water, the sun rapidly sinking. Men and mules tired, at all risk, I camp near the Indians. The immigrant ford is a wide lake-like expanse of the Calumet River that spans out over a large plateau on emerging from the basaltic gorge, through which the river finds its way from some distance. The walls of rock shutting it in being deep and almost vertical, reaching the water in the canyon is an impossibility. As the river widens out, it shallows sufficiently for ox teams and wagons to get through it. And being almost the only fordable place was always chosen by the immigrant trains coming to Oregon and California. The remains of half-burnt wagons and human bones still bleaching in the sun makes one shudder to think of the terrible fate of the weary wanderer cut off this fatal spot by the Indians. Their plan was to remain concealed until the trains were all safely through, then to swoop down upon them, while scattered and disordered by crossing, cut loose the oxen, kill the men, carry off women and children if the girls, burn the wagons, and secure all that suited them in the shape of plunder. The Indians near my camp were fishing in a small mountain stream, if bailing out fish by the bucketful could be called fishing. Round fish and brook trout were in such masses, I cannot find a better word, that we dipped out with baskets in our hands. In 10 minutes, enough fish to fill 2 large iron pails that we carried out with us. How such hosts of fish obtain food, or where they find room to deposit their ova, are mysteries. The Indians were splitting and drying them in the sun, strung on long peeled rods. May 19th. Had no trouble with these Indians. Hired 2 of them to aid me in again crossing the Calumet River, where it runs from the upper into lower Calumet Lake. For the first 4 miles we ascend a steep mountain, rather thickly timbered, killed the gray deer, and saw a splendid herd of wapiti. But the bell frightened them, so I did not get a shot. Cross the ridge and descend on an open grassy plain surrounding the lower Calumet Lake, which I should say, at a rough guess, is 30 miles in circumference. It is in reality more like a huge swamp than a lake, simply patches of open water peeping out from rank growths of rushes, at least 12 feet high in places. I should think that this place must be the head center of the entire beaver population of Oregon. In some of the patches of open water, there certainly was not room to jam in even a tiny beaver cottage of the humblest pretensions, although the open space occupied by the town was certainly acres in extent. The trees, although a good half-mile from the water, were felled in all directions, as if busy immigrants had been making a clearing. The branches lopped from the fallen trees, which had been dragged by these busy animals along the well-beaten roads that led in all directions, from the timber to the rushes, through which roads were also cut to gain an easy access to water. The branches, many of them large and heavy, were dragged by the beavers, backing along the roads 2 or 3, often assisting in tugging a single branch, until the water is reached, when they seize it with their chisel-like teeth, and using their powerful tails both as rudders and screw propellers, floated out to be employed in building their dome-shaped residency. Both of this more at length when referring to the habits of the beaver. Wildfowl too are here, in great variety and abundance. For the first time I see the breeding ground of the rough-billed pelican. Their nests were on the ground amidst the rushes, but unluckily I did not succeed in finding an egg. The nest is simply a confused heap of rushes, with a lot of down and feathers in the center. On the water, these huge birds swim as easily, buoyantly, and gracefully as swans, and in fishing, do not swoop down from a height, as does the brown pelican, but thrust their heads under water, and regularly spoon up small fish with their immense pouched beaks.